This week in IT SPARcast, TikTok wants to be your side piece for Valentine's Day. The EU suddenly wants to innovate, and the UK government wants to backdoor your privacy. Greetings and welcome to IT SPARcast. I'm your host, John Barker.
And I'm your host, Lou Schmidt.
It's Friday, February 14th. IT SPARcast is a digest of IT news over the last week with insights, opinions, and a little sarcasm from two experts, each with over 20 years of experience working in IT or for IT vendors.
And when we're doing this, it's Valentine's Day, and we're spreading the love. However, spreading the love means something very different when you're this annoyed.
That's right.
Having said that, let's jump into it, buddy.
Big news coming. Let's jump right into the news bites.
Wow. Okay, so let's start off the news with the EU sets a 200 billion AI spending plan in a bid to catch up with the US and China. Now, I can hear some of what you're thinking right now. We're going to get to that the next one. So the European Union pledged this week 200 billion euros, which is 206.15 billion. When this article was written, that's probably changed because holy crap, won't tell you why. To invest in artificial intelligence, the bloc seeks to catch up with the US and China in a race to train complex models, right? Europe is way behind in this, and we all know this. This isn't to say there aren't smart European people doing this. They're just all in the United States right now. You know, Meta's head of AI is French. There's lots and lots of smart European people, but they're over here doing AI instead of doing it in Europe. And once again, we're going to show you why. So the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said the bloc wants to supercharge its ability to compete with the US and China on AI. The plan, dubbed InvestAI, includes a $20 billion Euro fund for so-called AI gigafactories to accelerate powerful chips to train the most complex AI models. The quote is, "We want Europe to be one of the leading AI continents, which means embracing a life where AI is everywhere," said von der Leyen at the AI Action Summit in Paris. So let us come back together and let me air my primary concern with this. Dude, if you're in the EU, you don't have any freaking power. All right? You are like really screwed for electricity. If you're in Norway, maybe you can get away with this. Lots of hydropower in Norway, and they can put more in. Good for you, folks. If you're in Germany, forget about it. You're going to have to put up a whole bunch of more coal plants because you're not embracing nuclear. So just getting the energy to run this stuff is currently outside of the spectrum of your regulatory experience. The second big problem you have is, John, why don't you bring us up to date on the second really big problem you're going to have with this?
So normally we would take an article and we would just chat about it and go back and forth. But the second article that we have here directly ties into the first and almost counteracts it. So we want to talk about that as well.
You really need to bring us up on this one because I think it's crucial.
Yeah. So according to the BBC, the UK and the US are refusing to sign an international AI declaration. So this is a declaration that comes out of the EU and has dozens of countries signing it, including France, China, and India, that pledges an open, inclusive, and ethical approach to AI technology development. So in a brief statement, the UK said that they were not able to add its name to this over concerns about national security and global governance, meaning they want more governance over this and they want to have a backdoor into the system.
We are certainly going to come back to this topic at the end of this session.
We absolutely are. Absolutely. And then on the U.S. side, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance told the delegates in Paris that this was too much regulation and that artificial intelligence could kill a transformative industry just before it takes off. So basically, they're saying that they feel that the U.S. is in the lead and putting this type of regulation on it will slow down their efforts. And at the end of the day, maybe allow everybody else to catch up, which is, again, with the current politics going on in the U.S., that's not something that the the top level U.S. government is going to want to have happen. So to me, this seems to be an add-on to the previous topic where we're going to invest more in AI and we want to try to slow everybody else down by putting these guardrails up. And that's just an interesting geopolitical thing that's going on. And it seems that we then have two different countries on opposite ends of the spectrum here with, no, we want more regulation, or no, we want less regulation.
And the challenge is, there's a saying, and we've said it before, America invents, China copies, Europe regulates, right? And this is a widely believed saying in the VC community and the technical communities all over the place. When I spoke to the fact that we have plenty of really smart Europeans doing this stuff, they're doing it here because they can get it done. The problem with this is that, how do you regulate this? You don't get excellence from a committee. You're not going to get a breakthrough from a committee. The best you can hope for from a committee, a bunch of people who, and if we've seen this with the EU zone before, these are not AI experts. Only the people building the AI are the AI experts. And if you're not in the lead, it's in your best interest to try to slow your competitor down. This absolutely looks like a regulatory barrier being put up so they can catch up.
And if you look at what's been going on in Europe for the last 20 years, the level of innovation coming out of Europe has fallen far behind, and there's just a lot of almost Me Too. The level of things being put in place on cloud, and how sometimes you can't even have cloud data cross the geographic barriers inside the EU, let alone going out of the EU. A lot of those things are really slowing things down. And those innovations are either coming from the US, Japan, someplace like that. Not
China, which is putting a large amount of state effort into this stuff.
Absolutely.
So the problem is that it appears to me, at least, that the EU is taking a page out of China's book. They want to put regulation on anybody that comes into the continent, and then they want to use government money to boost this, which is sort of what China did, except China is not putting as much regulation on there. You saw DeepSeek release open source, which was a really big deal. Now, to be fair, we've seen Meta do that. We've seen a few other folks do that as well. It seems to be more of an Asian thing. I never thought I would say on this show that Asia is more open than Europe.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the way I would look at it is the regulations that China puts in place is more on personal privacy and personal stake than it is on innovation. So they want to innovate, they want to move faster, they want to open that up. And for better or worse, sometimes those regulations, there may be problems because of a lack of regulation. But I feel that I think your point that we talked about earlier was that if you regulate too early and you come in before you even know what the problems might be, then you will stifle innovation. And we need to know the problems that we could potentially run into before we apply regulation. And then, we're not saying that should never be regulation. We're saying you should know what you're regulating.
Exactly. And we've run into this problem with the number. There was a really interesting piece of information. I don't have the exact link to it in front of me, but there recent in the United States of America, if you're not paying attention, you're outside. There's been the new administration is pushing hard to open things up, right? To reduce the amount of regulation, because we know from our experience as a nation that when you reduce regulation, you increase innovation. Now, that's not without its downsides. So it's going to be very interesting to see. We're about to see a big experiment of a larger economy that's going to have reduced regulation. What's going to happen to the innovation? And we're all going to be able to watch this in real time. Now, here's another question for you, John. How in the world are we going to keep track of all these AI agents?
Well, that's just what Workday wants to do. And so according to TechCrunch, we've been really TechCrunch heavy today. They had a lot of really great news this week that they
Thanks, guys.
put out.
You're awesome.
Thank you very much. So Workday is an HR software company. If you're not familiar with them, and they're really big within enterprises that want to run various types of HR software, bonus tracking, performance management, things along those lines. They announced on Tuesday that they were going to release the Workday Agent System of Record. And so this means that they're going to help customers keep track of their AI agents with one control center, regardless of whether that agent is managed by Workday or by a third party. So I'm going to just read directly from this. This system gives companies visibility into what all of the agents are supposed to be doing, which tasks they are actually completing, and who at the company has access to which agents. The software tracks the impact of each agent and projected costs. Companies can also use the platform to turn agents on or off entirely, or to turn certain skills or tasks on or off. So here's what's really interesting here. If you were paying attention to IT Sparkcast this week, we did a live stream where we reviewed what Cisco is announcing at their big Cisco Live event that's going on in Amsterdam as we speak. And one of the things that Cisco's claiming is that they're going to be able, on the network, to be able to monitor and control the use of AI agents, which I'm skeptical of. But
How
if
in the
you're
world are they going to know what agents you have?
right, they might know that what's being used, and they might know that John is accessing ChatGPT and Lou is accessing Grok, but that's about, I think, the only level they can do. They're not going to be able to monitor the individual requests because of encryption and other things. But a software-based solution might be a better way to approach this. So it's still to be determined of how well this is going to work, especially for those third-party AI agents. But definitely for whatever Workday's released, I'm going to keep a good eye on this, because agentic AI is something I'm really interested in. But I do see the risks for the enterprise of losing control of your data, having the inappropriate material injected into an environment. And by inappropriate, I mean corporate assets that have some level of security that's required, and then just plugging that into a chat GPT or to a Gemini or something else. What's going to happen with that data going from there? So I think this will be really interesting to see.
Here's the point, riffing off what we were talking about earlier with Europe, right?
Yeah.
Regulation. There's a difference between a regulation and a standard. And I think this is an opportunity that IEEE and IETF and maybe somebody else have. I don't know if this is within the IETF's wheelhouse, to create a standard for an API to register an agent. And if you have agents, if you're able to identify agents that are operating on your network that are not registered, then you want to have the ability to mitigate those.
Right.
The problem is, and John, I think you have an excellent point here, is how do you know? Right. We are now reaching the point. If you look at the big breakthrough we talked last week, when we recorded last week, and you go back to it, about DeepSeek, right? The real breakthrough of DeepSeek was that they managed to condense a lot of very bulky algorithms. Right. Now you can do that by moving off Python, because Python is notoriously resource hungry, right? You can move to C, you can do all sorts of other things. But the point is, it is well within the thought pattern of the near future, the 18 months, that you could have agents running locally. How does that work?
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to want them, by the way. You're going to want
just thinking
them.
in real time
a virtual
here,
John and a virtual Lou.
Yeah, just thinking in real time, we keep talking about zero trust, ZTNA kind of things, and that's actually something that could have an impact on, especially on agentic AI, where you have some automated tool that is going off and making changes on the network, or going and completing tasks for you. Well, what if that task is something that you really don't want an agent doing? So maybe it's completing in this case, like HR, maybe it's actually completing performance reviews, and something along those lines. And at the very least, it can be flagged, but maybe it could be blocked, because of the maybe next generation of ZTNA would be able to go beyond the user and the device, and right to the app, and what app is actually accessing another app across the network. That can be really interesting.
Well, you want to talk about something else that's ill-advised?
Oh, I always want to talk about things that are ill-advised. Then maybe I'll ignore it.
I'm afraid the next two things are ill-advised. So
Yeah.
this week we're feeling the love, and TikTok wants to feel the love from you. So before I start this particular segment here, I would like to reiterate, as somebody who's been using Android since the very basic days, remember, kids, side loading is bad. Unless you really know what you're doing and you're willing to accept that your device could potentially be compromised because you did not inspect the code. If you inspected the code, hey, all power to you. You're smart enough to sideload. If you have good intelligence on who made this code, sideload. But one thing that happens when you run through the Play Store and Google is they do a battery of security tests on the applications. Of course, it's always listening to you because it just came up on my phone. So what's going on? TikTok, who is about to get banned because essentially your data is completely unsafe in there, wants you to get into the habit of sideloading their application. If they get you to do this, then they can bypass the store. In this case, the government. You can go download their software directly and live in the wonderful world of TikTok. So what they're doing is they're announced in a blog post last Friday, which would be the 7th of February, that its Android app would be available for direct download on TikTok.com download. I just gave you the URL. You can go and be stupid if you want. And let me tell you why you don't want to do this, right? You are now putting all of your trust in this company. Now, I personally don't think ByteDance is evil, but they're Chinese. They've got to do what the Chinese government says. You have absolutely no checks and balances between what that application can gather. No more. So, yes, they're going to do this. No, don't do it. John, you got a comment there.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background in case you haven't been paying close attention. Maybe you're outside the United States and such, but there was a ban that was called the TikTok ban, but it was a little bit greater in scope than that. It had the potential to ban any application that the U.S. government felt was a security risk due to foreign actors, but was really focused on TikTok. That went into effect on January 19th, I believe it was. And then immediately when the Trump administration came in, they signed an executive order putting a stay, saying, we're not stopping the ban, but we're going to not enforce it for the next X amount of time until we can maybe come up with a better solution. Now, what happened is that both of the app stores from the two major vendors, Apple and Google, never re-implemented the download of the applications. Even though you could access TikTok if you already had the app, or you could go to the website, the app itself was no longer available for download from either platform. So this is a way to get around that. But if you go back about, I think, 3 weeks, Lou did a good review of the terms of service and the privacy policy for TikTok. And they are open, and they admit this, that they're keeping a lot of data about you, the viewer, and they will turn that over to whoever is the government of record, which could be China, could be US, could be anybody else. But we know that the Chinese government has the ability, if they want, to go request any bit of data they want from TikTok. Once you get rid of the security policies of the App Store process, and people can argue, they can do the Apple versus Android thing and argue that, how strong those processes are. There are processes in place. And now you have the opportunity to have software that has no review at all. And who knows what that might do. And again, part of what the Chinese government can do is to make a company based in China change their software and do things that you might not want them to be doing. So that's just an interesting piece. And I got to agree with Lou. I've done sideloading as, experimental projects, but I've never done it on like my mainstream device. I've just done it as, okay, I want to see how this works. I want to install this software.
If you're in a dev environment, you're going to do this. You do this through
Right.
ADB, right? Android
Right.
development. And, sometimes you can pull in Apex and do this, depending on what you're trying to do. But this is absolutely not okay for a production level device. And I have to add at this point that one thing I didn't harp on when I did the analysis of their terms and conditions is that ByteDance's founder was sort of raked over the coals by the CCP and had to publicly state that they were going to do better in staying with the Chinese Communist Party's goals. When I say that I think the founder of ByteDance doesn't want to do this, I don't think the founder of ByteDance have a choice, right? So for algorithmic stuff, even though they say that this stuff is, it's being the American or North American database is being managed by Oracle, there is nothing explicitly says that they can't pull the data out. And you're just going to make it easier for them. We don't know if that's going to change. The data flows are going to change in their APAC or what, until somebody tears it down.
And just because we haven't been doomsaying enough, it is now time for the CVE of the week. Oh. All right, so the CVE of the week is our weekly segment where we pick a common vulnerability and exposure entry, and we tell you how to deal with it and mitigate it. But for the last few of these, we actually haven't been going after CVEs because we found more interesting security concerns to talk about. And we've got a big one that I'm sure you've already started to hear about, but we're going to dive into.
Folks, I really need to bring, first of all, we're going to stay co-equal on this screen because this is going to be a discussion. Because one, we both have a lot of strong feelings about this. And two, we are both pissed as hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me dive into this and start this out. This is about UK ordering Apple to let it access everybody's encrypted data on iCloud. Everyone. Okay. So
worldwide.
My point to you, I am now going to start swearing, but I'm going to swear in UK. Look, you bloody wankers are allowed to do whatever you want with your frickin' people. And we in North America can say, hey, we're not going to give you any money to do stupid stuff. But your government doesn't get to come in and read my backups. And I'm about to tell you why you're screwing yourself. First of all, 1984 from Orwell was not an instruction manual. Is there any part of you that actually understands that this is a very stupid thing to do? Now let's get into why this is stupid. Deeply unpopular UK government has decided to break privacy for the entire world, slamming Apple with a top secret order that demands blanket access to personal data, right? So not only did they tell a company that's doing business in the UK that we have to have access to your data and encryption keys, the law says you can't talk about it. This was leaked. Now, let me tell you how screwed you are right now. If Apple somehow managed to leak this, how many companies didn't manage to leak this? Right. If a company that you trust, have a trust relationship with, is doing business in the UK, you are already compromised. You cannot assume. So you know what today's CVE is? It is the UK.
It's the UK government.
The UK government. Look, I love fish and chips. You have some good beer. Outstanding herringbone, plead, pip, pip, all that crap. Go kick your government in the ass. This is completely unacceptable. You guys can't even be trusted with a stick and string right now, and I would take the string away. Okay?
Yeah.
What's going on? They have come to Apple and said you have to provide encryption keys. Now, the big stuff we've been hearing about is like Apple's basically, at this point, maybe going to have to pull out of the UK. They'll certainly have to pull iCloud out, or encrypted iCloud, say, no, you can't have this. But I'm going to go one step further this time. If you are doing business, now that we know that they will do this, any company you're doing business with that has cloud encryption, like 1Pass, whoever is maintaining your password, Google, Microsoft, because they can give this order and have a legal thing to go after you in the UK, you have to assume you're compromised. This is what we haven't been hearing, right? That it's all about Apple, and Apple, to their credit, is standing up to this. But if you are not moving all of your critical encrypted data into systems that your vendors do not have the keys, you are vulnerable.
100%. So I'm going to try to bring this down a bit to where I think we currently are and what's going on. So my guess is that Apple is one of the first significant companies, large stakeholders that's been hit by this order. We
But
don't
we
know.
don't know.
We don't know. Some of the wording that's come out from Google makes it indicate that they have not yet done this, but they also have stated that they don't, like Apple, don't have the ability to provide a backdoor because of the way the encryption is working. The encryption is completely opaque to Google and also to Apple. So a backdoor would have to be created in order to be able to comply with this. Now, that's inherently dangerous just on its face, because a backdoor will get violated. It really will. It's going to happen. And there's multiple vectors for that to happen. One, disgruntled employees. So somebody leaves Apple or leaves Google or leaves Microsoft or whoever is impacted by this, and they know the back door. They know how to access that back door. That becomes very valuable information that they can profit from. Or maybe they're just upset, so they let it out. They leak it.
Or can the state actually compromise a person who has the authority to grant those keys, which, as you can see, as we dig deeper and deeper into what's going on in the United States, we've certainly seen some incredibly questionable decisions made. And we're actually exposing this stuff. What I've seen lately from the UK is scary.
Yeah. And then, but the other side to it is let's just say that Apple, Google, Microsoft, whoever else might be impacted by this, puts enough security in place internally that access to this is completely vaulted. No one employee has direct access and can expose this. It's still an attack vector. If there's a back door, somebody is going to start, some foreign actor, some malicious group is going to start attacking. And I'll tell you what, it may not even necessarily be somebody you would classically consider a threat actor, but just like there are companies that base their entire company on being able to jailbreak and unlock an iPhone for forensic purposes, that information, those tools get used by bad guys. So maybe it's one of those types of companies that starts attacking these backdoors that are put in, or it could be a foreign adversary, Russia, China, whoever that might be, North Korea, that starts attacking and hacking their way in. And
kids, this
is not good. This is no bueno.
This is the most serious security breach I've seen maybe ever. So I'm going to give you two pieces of advice, John. I definitely want, but two pieces of advice. One, any company that's doing cloud crypto backups for you, you need to pressure them to make sure that they are not even going to think of this. Two, you need to get this stuff off the cloud into local control. So, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Here's my thing.
What do you got?
Is I think that what's going to happen is, now that this has been exposed, I think that you're going to find more and more companies push back. And I think that this is going to go away. It's not gone away yet, so you got to be careful today. But the really concerning part of this is the gag order part, that is, you as Apple or whoever the other company is can't talk about it. You can't say that you've complied. You can't acknowledge that you've even received the request. And that is really concerning. And, because that is something that I would want to know. But I think that their intent there is that we don't want you to know, the individual, because we don't want you to have a choice and say, I want to move away from a potentially compromised solution. So this is really bad. But I want to hear from, I've got a number of friends in the UK, former coworkers that are in the UK.
We love
how do you guys feel about what the government's doing? We as Americans are constantly getting asked about what our government is doing or has done and how we feel about it, because again, on whatever side of the aisle you are, you can say that there's really questionable activity going on. This seems to be really questionable activity. I would love to hear somebody from the UK respond on this.
I mean, this is I have to say, having looked at this and thought about this, this is almost a going to war level breach. This is really, so one other piece of advice I would give you is, if you're renegotiating contracts with a cloud vendor, you need to put a clause in there that says, if the UK has gotten any of your knowledge, that they will be sued for breach of information.
Yeah.
The only way you're going to get, Apple is standing up to this, and I got to give them massive kudos for this.
Yeah.
We don't know who else is doing it because I'm sure other companies are standing up, but the reason they're standing up for this is because of you and the pressure you're going to put on them and the money you're going to take away from them. And you absolutely 100% need to proactively go out there to every cloud vendor you're using and say, you will not do this. There will be legal ramifications for you doing this in the country you are providing services in if our data leaks to the UK or any other government vendor and we find out about it. And we will find out about it.
So as you can tell, we're really passionate about this. And while I'm got a smile on my face, I'm just as steamed as Lewis. I'm just trying to keep myself down at a more manageable level. But
He's
I
the
agree
good
with
cop.
everything that Lewis said. And it's right. This is a really scary thing. And with some of the other privacy things going on in the UK, you know, this is just a really concerning turn for what that government is doing. And this is something I would expect from a North Korea or a Russia or a China. This is not something I would expect from democracy, right? So I'm like, what's going on here? But anyway, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this episode up before we blow a gasket here.
Well,
But we want to hear from you. We want to know how you feel about any of the topics we talked about today. What's going on in the EU? What's going on with the US and the UK kind of pulling away from some of those EU regulations? What's going on with the UK and privacy? What is your take on this? Send email to feedback@itsparkcast.com. That's feedback@itsparkcast.com. Or hit us up on X or put a comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube and let us know how you feel there. You can also reach out to us on LinkedIn where we post this video. We want to hear from you there. We've been seeing a lot of traction on LinkedIn and X recently. Be sure to hit like and subscribe and turn on notifications. That's really going to help this channel grow. If you feel that you're getting valuable information from us, if you're learning something and this is helping you out in your day-to-day job, tell your friends, tell your colleagues about us. That's going to really help them get the same access to this information and, again, help this channel grow. We're going to be back next week with more news and opinions from the world of enterprise IT. Take care.
See ya.